Good evening, everyone. Oh, this one works. Thank you for joining us for our April 3rd workshop meeting. Can you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll begin with our reports. Mr. Rydell, do you want to proceed with your superintendent's report? Thank you.
Thank you. So this evening we're going to continue on with the dialogue and the presentation of the budget and the budget planning process. And we're going to need Mike Bakatsias to log into the computer.
Technical difficulties, please hold on. He's signing off.
So our point this evening as we load the slide deck is to review some of the important slides that we've covered over the past several weeks regarding expenses, revenue, and also how that will come into play as far as decision making that the Board of Education will be required to do. Really as soon as our next board meeting on April 24th, we will be seeking an adoption of the budget. So we want to try to cover as much information as possible this evening and really weave in several of the key pieces that we've covered in the past several meetings. So I want to highlight this slide with a little bit more of an accentuation than I have in the previous meetings because I think it really will resonate once we've completed the entire process. Throughout this budget development process, the team that's been involved with this, which includes all of our building administrators, our business office, and all of district office, is ensuring that the decisions that we're making from the administrative level yields a budget that is lends itself to sustainability. So something that will not only preserve the programs that we currently have in this district, but also allow us to continue those programming into the future while also being fiscally responsible to our community. We did use a strategy this year, which was a culmination of some previously used strategies, but the best way to really zero in on that is to use the word zero-based budgeting. So we took a look at the line items across our district. Mr. Segarra and his team really then said, what were the overall expenses from year to year, looking at multiple years, and then working with each of the departments. When I say departments, I mean departments in our buildings, such as our cafeteria, in some regards, our facilities, as well as our buildings, looking at all of those aspects of the budget and saying, which line applies to which purchases and how can we better outline this this budget. And that's what you'll see when you take a look at our line items in our proposed budget. You'll see that really looks a lot different than it has in previous years. Also looking at all of our revenues and our anticipated revenues over the coming years, and how does that match up to what our expenses are and the expenses that we predict. So I just wanted to cover those main items there, but I think the other item that's important to highlight is the line there, protect core instructional programs, because we really are tasked with not only the fiscal responsibility, but also providing the best educational experiences for our students across our district. So this graphic just really gives a visual to that very delicate balance that one encounters when they're looking at a budget, such as a school district's budget, which is how do you balance out your expenditures and with that of the money that's coming in or your revenue. particularly when there are question marks that still remain. Question marks that we've spoke of in previous presentations and will continue to speak about, I'm sure, throughout this evening. So looking at the revenue side of things, I just wanted to recap this slide here. This is the allocation of monies that the district receives from the various revenue sources. The one that I want to highlight, while it is only 2% of this pie, are the pilots, because this is where it's a unique year and there's a very clear importance to making sure that everyone, especially those that are making the decisions on April 24th, but then also those that are making decisions in May on our school budget vote, they need to understand what this impact will be and how we're addressing it. So that 2% can be divided up among these entities of pilots that the district receives as revenue up to this school year. 87% of that is through the dance camera power plant. That pilot is now coming off the books, and ultimately they will become part of the tax levy. So that property, that money, that revenue that the district received will now shift into the tax levy pie of the revenue source. So here's another graphic that just demonstrates what is happening with the pilots going into the next school year, so that where that big drop off is, the relative drop off, is in the 25-26 school year. So keeping all that into perspective, and again, this is just another visual showing what the pie looks like, along with the visual that I like, which are the boxes off to the left, showing what the 24-25 looks like versus what the 25-26 pie would look like, where the pilots represent about 0.3% of the revenue that the district receives. And you'll see that the property taxes then went up to 64.2 from the 60% on the previous slide. So I want to pause on this and just explain that number. So with the property taxes, and you see a number going up from 60 to 64.2, one needs to keep in mind that represents the property for the power plant and their contribution to that. So in no shape or form would that be interpreted as property taxes are going up 4.2%. It's the amount that makes up that portion of our revenue allocation is going up that amount based on what we are predicting to be the amount that will be on the tax rolls as a result of their assessment, of the assessment of which we're sure they're challenging, and that's where we're going in at the conservative number of where their tax roll may end up. So this graphic just represents how that looks. You'll see the tax levy portion of that increasing as a result of the dance camera. This is just a review, just because it is a relatively large number and we wanted to separate this out. Once again, these are just the federal funds that we receive that are based on programs that we provide in our school district. So that accounts for a revenue portion there. We just wanted to break that out. These are not grants, once again, just to review, that we apply for. These are ones that we qualify for. This, again, is another review of a slide. This represents state aid over the past several years. So when you'll see our trend in tax levy, you'll see in some cases there were decisions that were made to reduce the tax levy based on the increase in foundation aid and other aid categories for our district. You'll see that has virtually leveled off, a slight decrease from year to year in the foundation aid, and the slight change in the overall state aid number. We'll get into that in a moment. But that increase, that represents really what was necessary, or what the school district was actually entitled to and should have been receiving for several years. So this is a breakdown of our state aid categories, and you'll see the foundation aid going across the top, and basically with a hold harmless being in that first row there for the 25-26 school year, where you'll see decreases in the overall state aid are in the expense-based driven aids. So those are aids that we would spend money for and then get aid based on that. A big reason or rationale for those decreases is that our aid rate actually went down. It went down by 4% from year to year. And so that's certainly something that impacts budgeting and ultimately the revenue side of things. And Emerson, you can jump in whenever you want. Want to do fund balance?
Sure. So this is another source of revenue for the district. I want to call it basically reserves instead of just fund balance. This is the money that the district had put aside for specific purposes. Some of those categories, the money that has been set aside have been set aside just for one particular purpose. And at the end of the school year, whatever money is left over basically becomes fund balance. So this is another source of revenue that we have at our disposal. It's limited. If you see the total of it, it's about $10 million. And it will be used to basically fill whatever gap we have in our revenue sources. We'll go the last item for revenue sources. This is basically just a recapping on the prior conversations that we have, are the tax levies. In this graph, we're showing the tax levy history. And I'd like to point out the 25-26 year is still unknown, as some of those decisions are up to the board to make. And also when our revenue becomes a lot more clear, the state currently does not have a budget. We're expecting April 1st to have a budget. We don't have anything yet, so the figures that we're working on are estimated based on early numbers that were released back in December. The very last session that we reviewed the budget, we went in detail over our expenses. I really want to focus on what is driving our budget up. Why is our budget up 2.3%? And some of those things have to do with salaries. This is the commitments that we have made to our employees, benefits that go along with that, and also increases in general areas such as healthcare. Healthcare keeps increasing every year. This year, it was a 3.5% increase. I am a member, I represent the district in the health and the board, and we don't see those numbers going down. So future healthcare, and I think not only we're experiencing this, but every sector of our economy sees the healthcare running costs. We also have some unknown variables in our budget, which is we're currently negotiating with the MFA. And depending on where those negotiations land, they will also be have an impact on our budget. So we want to dive now into like some of the numbers that we proposed to you earlier, and what constitutes our budget. If you see the largest portion, the largest dollar amount are basically salaries, benefits, sorry, followed by salary. Those are the two major drivers of the budget. So while other categories might have a large percentage, when you look at or you factor the dollar amount, they're not considerably significant when you compare it to benefits, salaries, and some other contractual obligations that we have. At the last board meeting, we were asked to elaborate on the other category. I'd like to take a second to honor that request. Basically, we open up that category, and this is what makes up those numbers. I'd like to bring your attention to a specific one here that says conferences. It shows a 50% increase. It is not a 50% increase. This is basically a reallocation of what we do with this category. This category of conferences is basically cover the superintendent conference days that we have, staff seminars and training that are covered. they were just basically under a different line in the budget. This year, they have been moved to something that makes more sense. So for someone who's reading our budget, they could go and say, this is specifically the line that covers all those items. And overall, it's, you'll see overall it's over probably just $100,000 in that other section. So in this graph, we basically wanted to show where, kind of like almost recapping where we are. We know, or we have an estimate of what our revenues from state aid will be. We know what our new pilots will be. The board will basically decide on our budget and basically also on the allocation on revenue, on the revenue allocation for the tax levy, and also any appropriation that we do from our reserves to be able to offset that number. And finally, what are the next steps that we have coming ahead? We still don't have a state budget, so our figures are basically just projections that we have based on what we have. And the next meeting, which is on the April 24th, the board will decide on the tax levy, the portion that is used from reserves, and any changes to the existing budget lines that we have proposed so far. Having said that, we will open it for the board for questions. But I also want to put a plug out to the community. Anyone who's interested in learning more about the budget, we're opening all channels of communications. You could send your inquiries, your questions to budget@marlboroschools.org. We also have a web page dedicated just to the budget that basically maps out the roadmap on where we started and where we're going. It serves as education on terminology that we use. Also explains how our accounts are created. There's a wealth of information in there, and everything that we have provided, we provide to the board, will also be posted there. So if you miss something, if you miss a meeting, we'll probably even link this meeting, and we'll put it over. So visit our webpage, contact us, and we're here to answer all your questions. I'll open up the floor for any questions from the board, and we have one more slide after that. Sure.
I just want to say thank you. Very nice. So go back to where it says textbook, software, the budget, the miscellaneous stuff. There you go. So I have a question. That's coming out of the general budget. Shouldn't that be coming out of the building budgets, like the textbooks, depending on each building?
It's for presentation purposes. This all has been basically put together. So when you look at the budget, we're trying to summarize in broad categories. So textbooks, basically, it's not only just one building. It's basically all.
Right, so shouldn't that be underneath their budgets? Their expenses, and the same thing with the software? Shouldn't that go underneath the technical, underneath tech department, and take that amount and put it? It should be coming out of their budgets or in their budget, or putting it in their budgets and not this one?
Yeah, I think it's one of the things I want to just highlight, that just so it's clear, there are no their budgets versus our budgets. It's all our budget, right? So these material and supplies, I get your question. I just want to clarify for anybody watching. So the material and supplies, that's not a district line item. That's a combination of the material and supply lines across our district, which it's broken down. If you take a look at the different line items, you'll see MES material and supplies. You'll see different departments or grade level material and supplies. This is combining that to just show what the year-to-year difference is. And I think what Emerson was really explaining with the conferences applies to some of these other lines as well, because when you see the material and supplies, yes, a portion of that is because buying power has decreased over years, right? So as things get more expensive, you get less for the same amount, but also looking at what monies were transferred from other line items into material and supplies, and then, excuse me, having administrators also explain what their plans were for the next year in the realm of materials and supplies, that's what led to these numbers. So your question is great if that was just one portion of the budget. It's really a combination. I'll just get into the weeds a little further.
So that's basically, anyone that's ordering textbooks, if it's a preschool, will say, kindergarten, whatever, high school, whatever, that's the amount of money.
With the exception of preschool, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry,
Yep.
you're right. So that's for the whole district, 129,000.
Yes.
It's actually not a bad price for 3 buildings with almost 2,000 students in it.
Well, we're not buying books every year. You know, books do have a lifetime, and so as we plan out
Right,
replacements of books.
You're
yes,
replacing them, correct. But I mean, that's still not, for the amount of students we have, that's not bad. And so the software also is like for new computers that are going out, or new software, like new, just plain software that we need for the classrooms?
Yes.
That's what that's for?
Yes.
And like,
This
if
is-
we
this
need a
is
couple
front-facing-
laptops or whatever?
Front-facing software, this is software that the kids will use. The state does not provide reimbursement for software, let's say for the business office or for transport, for other departments. It has to be used for the student, direct use.
So this is just for students, or is it for the whole district?
With software, this is just students.
Thank you. Very nice. You guys did a very nice job.
And when it comes to software, you know, we're very mindful of launching software because it's an annual license, right? So if you're buying a site license or a district license or a per user license, that's a recurring expense. So one of the things, just to also give the board some insight on what happens behind the scenes when you're looking at a budget, we did user reports and analysis, some of which we can run ourselves, some of which we have to go outside. Mr. Bakatsias was very instrumental, along with Ms. Hecht, in looking at various softwares. How often are people using this? And then we made decisions. Are we getting a return on investment of renewing that license? Because also, as with most things, licenses increase over time. So they may have a 2% escalator each year, or every couple of years they'll give you an increase. So we actually did remove software licenses from our list based on use. You'll still see that there's an increase, but that increase would have been larger. Would it have been so significantly larger that you would have maybe, looked at it like you did conferences? No. But nonetheless, those are the things, because again, not to be redundant with the term I use, but nickels turn into dimes, dimes turn into dollars. Those things allow us to be able to do other things while using the same monies as a district.
Thank you.
There was another part of your question, Joanne,
No,
wasn't
no.
there?
No,
Did we
that-
get it all?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was it. This is, at least you're being mindful to the community, and you're showing us what, we're spending the money on and what it's for. So it's nice to see that. So thank you.
Our administrative team deserves that. Yeah, across the board, the work that the building administrators did, because then they work with the teachers, they work with the departments within their building. That's what allows us to be in what we consider to be a very good position, despite when you look at certain numbers. So Emerson brought up the 4.5%, which is representing what we're anticipating is approximately where that pilot shifting into our tax levy will be. That's not increasing revenue. But then you look at some of the slides where you see a disparity between what our current budget is to what our proposed budget is. You'll see that there's a gap, and that pilot shifting over is the same money, just in a different pile. Now we have to start talking about how do we bridge that gap. And that's really where April 24th is going to come into play, because we'll need to look at what is our tax levy impact beyond that which the pilot is going to impose. So in other words, how much are we going to say we're increasing the tax levy by? being mindful, we're not saying how much are we increasing taxes of an individual home or a town. We're saying what are we increasing the tax levy by? You'll recall that the tax levy formula, the cap, which is what New York State puts out there for districts that we're required to adhere to. If you want to go out for a simple majority, which is 50% plus one, you have to fall below this tax cap. Based on our formula and the pilot coming off being a big driver, our tax levy cap is 9.11. So in looking at all of the numbers and where we landed, we feel very comfortable of saying that $67 million that was up on the previous slide, that is our proposal for the board to consider. And the decisions that we'll have to make is that the number that the board agrees with? And then what is the tax levy that we're looking at? And what is the use of reserves? Our proposal would include going to 9% of that, and then looking at what's the impact on the taxes. I don't know if you want to be on a scenario that you ran in your team.
So you have to consider that you have a tax base, and now you have a large company basically coming in the middle and injecting their value into all of this. So the state has giving you a one-time chance to kind of like recoup that money from the pilot and bring it back into the tax levy. Our projections right now show that there could be potentially a decrease in the tax levy per 1,000 tax rate, right? All right.
So yeah, we used this year's numbers because we don't have assessment information because that won't come out until August. So we used what would happen if we put these numbers in, because we feel very confident about these numbers and the requirement to be at that number to preserve all of our programs, despite the cuts that we found, or I should say the reduction in allocation, in order to keep all the programs. So we used the assessments from the 24-25 school year and put that into the calculation. And what that actually showed was that there was a slight decrease. Now, this is all based on this year. This is not predicting or forecasting what would happen in the August assessment runs. But it actually resulted in a decrease in taxes in each of the three municipalities. We put that calculation in the board's packet this evening, just so you can see the numbers. That's based on the 24-25 school year. So again, these are decisions that we'll ultimately have to make, but we wanted to put it out there, again, using the current year's numbers, that it actually is still favorable for the district based on the numbers we have now. So there, like my first presentation, there were question marks that existed. Those question marks remain. We just want to be fully transparent throughout the whole process of where we are when we do these calculations and these hypotheticals, so that the board can make the best decision possible. So I'm sure that may prompt another question or two.
Yes. So first of all, thank you for breaking this all down. And I really want to just thank this entire team, all of you collectively, for being so transparent, because we keep talking about the what ifs, the unknowns, you know, and I think you have demonstrated, and you're going to put it up on the website, which is tremendous, because this is a board who's very big on transparency, educating the public on, you know what, we did what we could internally, what we do have control over, and you're breaking it down. You've met with all the admins met with their teams. Everyone understands how critical this is to be, you know, as you say, nickels turn into dimes, dimes turn into dollars. We have to prove to our taxpayers that we are not taking our taxpayers for granted, and that we are doing everything we can to soften the blow, so to speak, because of all of the unknowns. And I think that this is tremendous, and by having it on the website, it'll be a home run, because everyone can just go to the website and they will see all of the hard work that all of you have done collectively. With that said, though, I would like to bring it back to a point, because I need to make sure that I'm processing this correctly.
Sure.
When you said about the 4.25%, that won't be the property, we're not gonna take a hit on that as taxpayers with the property tax. I just think that needs to be clarified, and the folks at home really need to hear that, and I know that'll be on your website, but I think that that's a critical point.
Yeah, excuse me. So the 4.5%. Yep, no problem. So, yeah, so I'll explain where I'm getting that from. So if we were to take what we are conservatively forecasting will be the shift of the money that we have received for the pilot that is now over, if that were to come over to the tax levy, so again, that's a conservative number because we don't know what the assessment's going to be of that property following their contesting the assessment. So we're keeping it conservative. So that going over alone is 4.5% tax levy increase. So if one were to see tax levies increasing in Marlboro by 4.5%, that would, by the simplest logic, not have any impact on the rest of the tax base because there's one taxpayer that's paying that. Now, I say the simplest logic, not to oversimplify it, but it actually has a greater impact than that because that's what led me to say, without having the actual data up on a slide and potentially a one meeting prematurely, but if we were to go out at not the 4.5%, because that's just the money coming over in theory from the pilot, but also going out with below what the tax cap formula indicates, which is 9.11, going out at another number, and I chose to use it because we've done the calculation, a number like 9.0 still would have, if you use this year's assessment data, but factoring in that pilot going into, so basically using this year's scenario, because we can't do next year's, it actually was a reduction of the individual taxpayers in each of the 3 municipalities of what their amount was per $1,000 of their assessment. So that's not meant to be a guarantee. And next meeting, I know I was asked in the past, like, what's going to happen if we do this to the tax levy, what's going to happen to individual person's taxes? We don't know. We won't know until August. I can just tell you, if you use this year's numbers, I think it's important to be redundant, so I apologize. If you use this year's numbers and you plug that pilot money into our tax levy, it actually decreases the taxes. I hope that was clear.
That was, anybody else?
Just for the taxpayers to be aware, if Dan Scammer came over at their full assessed value currently, what would that look like?
So if the money that, based on what their assessment amount is, it would probably be somewhere in the 3.3, I'll over round, so round up, range. That would be, that's from memory, from quite a while ago of looking at that. But it's definitely above $3 million, so I feel comfortable saying that. So that would obviously have a larger impact because you're shifting over that amount into your tax levy portion, and certainly it would thereby, if other things were equal, would reduce the amount of taxes that are paid by all other taxpayers that are part of that portion of the pie, again, to use our visual. Did I answer your question, James?
You answered it wonderfully. Thank you. And thank you for the presentations. We need them in our tax base, so let's just be conscious of whatever's going on with them in the town of Newburgh. But it has a major effect on us, and them being a part of our community clearly has a huge effect on us. So let's keep that in mind as we go to vote.
Yeah, and there has been nothing but positive experiences in working with them, with various entities all in the realm of pilot and that type of thing, and just communication with the school district. So there's certainly no negative piece of our interaction, but you're absolutely right. And then that's really where the company and, of course, the town of Newburgh, the school district, we all want them as far as, being a part of our revenue base, but it's also about keeping them. So that's really where we anticipate, actually we know because they informed us, they are going to contest their assessment. And that's not a surprise to anyone. It's a matter of what ultimately comes out of that contesting of the assessment, which is, again, where we use the number that we carried over the pilot. Ideally, it's a little bit more. Ideally, it's a lot more, but ideally, it's a little bit more. And there's where the decision comes in from the Board of Education. Do we, similarly to state aid, if we get more in state aid than we currently show in the runs, which is not really anticipated, but if that were to be the case, what does that do to our decision-making as far as the allocation of reserves to balance it, or what does that do to our ultimate number of our budget itself?
Does anybody have any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Sure, okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All
Yeah.
right. Oh, do you
Oh.
have one more thing?
Yes.
Emerson?
Oh, yeah, one more slide.
Just another plug. We have a couple of events or a couple of important deadlines ahead. Anyone interested in running for the board, your candidate petition needs to be in by April 21st by 5 p.m. Applications could be obtained at the district office, and we have some here for anyone who is here today. The next board meeting, it's a big board meeting. It's possibly our adoption day. That's on the 24th. And I'll also put the rest of the days in the budget website so people could follow and be aware of the upcoming deadlines for this vote.
I have a handy calendar here. Spring recess is still the 21st, so we will have people in the office to receive petitions.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is the OXPA report. Ms. Zanini?
So last night we had two attorneys come from Shaw, Pearlson, May, and Lambert, and they talked about several different hot topics, DEI policies, undocumented immigrants and ICE, Title IX regulations, laws that protect transgender students. They went over some collective bargaining stuff, and then the student board members with the effective date of July 1st. So we're going to have to do that sooner than we normally do and get it done by probably the end of the school year so that we have our rep for our reorg meeting. May 7th is their next meeting. It's going to just be a general discussion. June 4th is the annual meeting and the dinner at Cosmos. And then, as Emerson said, on April 24th, we'll have to do the BOCES budget vote and vote for the admin members. I do have a PowerPoint from last night that they emailed that I could share with all of you if you want to go through all the slides.
Thank you, Faith. Okay. Amelia, you want to give us your student representative report?
My turn. I'll start with sports. Okay, tennis is off to a 3-0 start for the season. The combined Marlboro Highlands lacrosse team is 3-1 to start the season. Softball and baseball start on April 7th at Roundout. And members of the SALT team are going to MES for their second visit with the 5th graders to continue the conversation of leadership and positive culture in the building. Elementary school, the MES student ambassadors designed social action messages to display throughout their school. Students and family enjoyed the Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library scavenger hunt. The MES PTA hosted the annual door decorating contest. MES hosted the author Chris Gerberstein. MES is excited to join the neighbors at Highland Elementary for the Kids Healthy Heart Challenge to with kickoff being Friday, April 11th. MMS, March 28th, the middle school had a student workshop day. Students had the opportunity to participate in hands-on learning activities sponsored by the Unified Art Teachers. 6th grade teachers or 6th grade students took an intro to Spanish class with the foreign language teachers and the school counselors. Ms. Seneker's annual Shark Tank will be taking place on April 10th with community members and parents will be coming in to judge. April 8th and 9th, they have the ELA New York State Assessment. April 11th, the Hobbit illustrator will be coming in. April 11th, NJHS is hosting an Easter egg hunt at MMS from 5:30 to 6:30. And April 13th, the Select Chorus will be performing at the Brooklyn Nets basketball game at 1 p.m. And for the high school, we had the Creative and Career Workshop Day, and we had different workshops like a helicopter, EMS trucks, and fire trucks. The Ulster County Prevention Council will be presenting information on the dangers of vaping. That's going to be happening in the upcoming weeks. We hosted the district-wide band day April 2nd and the choral day on March 26th. We had the 5th, 6th, and 8th graders come up, and the seniors took their senior trip to Disney, March 28th through April 1st.
Thank you. Okay, so before we go into the consent agenda, we do have a walk-in resolution to make an amendment to the personnel grid. So can I have a motion to do that? Joanne? Faith? Okay. So I'm going to read walk-in resolution. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves the addition to the personnel recommendations to include the items listed below as presented. 1. Elimination of the positions of 4 part-time teaching assistants. 2. Creation and increase of the position of 2 full-time teaching assistants. 3. Appointment of certified personnel. Lauren Roberts, TA Step 1, Kaylee Muggio, TA Step 1. Can I have a motion? Faith? Second. James Kuha. Any discussion? No? Okay. Let's take the vote. Faith?
Yes.
James Kuha?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. We're going out of line.
Yes.
Sorry. James Mullen?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Make sure I don't yell it. All right, so for recommended actions, we do not have any recommended actions this evening, right? I don't, okay.
We got to do the consent agenda now.
Oh, sorry, I have to go back. I'm sorry. Okay, but I'm just crossing this out because we did that, right? So we're going back to the consent agenda. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendents of Schools, approves the contracts, agreements, and reports as presented. So I don't say this now, right? Because we just... You do it. I have to still say it. Okay, I want to make sure I'm... Personnel recommendations, official board meeting minutes of 3/20/25, claims audit report, CSE, CPSE reports. Can I have a motion? James Mullen, second. Joanne? Any discussion?
Can we
James?
just get an explanation? Because deleting 4 positions to create 2 positions and having people, can we just get a little explanation as to what's going on?
Sure. So just starting off with the first portion of that, this is not eliminating any positions that are occupied by individuals. So these are 4 part-time teaching assistant positions that are in our budget and have been approved by the Board of Education at one point or another. We have a need for 2 full-time teaching assistants based on that are driven by our Committee for Special Education, and the fiscally responsible thing to do is to utilize 2 full-time teaching assistants. We did not have that as a created position, but we did have 4 part-time teaching assistants as approved positions. So it was my recommendation that we eliminate those 4 part-time unfilled positions to create 2 full-time teaching assistant positions to fulfill requirements on student IEPs as a result of meetings this spring.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, will take the vote. Faith?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Any new business? Any old business? Any other items?
I do.
Faith?
So the MHS PTSA wants to thank the community for the support of the recent fundraiser at Angry Chef. They were able to raise $1,352, and these funds raised will enable the PTSA to provide scholarships to graduating seniors this year. And they just ask that people do consider becoming members because that'll help them out too.
That's awesome. Okay, recognition of district residents. Anyone? So I don't have to read it.
No, unless someone's speaking. Can I? So Amelia is actually part of our student athlete leadership team. So I'm going to put you on the spot since you mentioned that you and your team are going to MES, because I actually had the opportunity to see Amelia. These students, they juggle a lot, right? Amelia is a good example of that. I would say maybe even sometimes over juggling. But nonetheless, I had the opportunity to be in the high school the other day, and Amelia and other members of SALT were in a classroom after school giving up their time training for their upcoming visit to MES. And it was really, it was great to see, and there was great energy. But Amelia, this board is really interested in what takes place in our buildings. They don't have the same luxury that I do, that I can pop into a classroom and see that. Can you share a little bit about your experience? Because I'm also curious a little bit about it.
With SALT?
With SALT.
Yeah, so we went into the first meeting we did, we went into the 5th grade classrooms. I was in Miss Bogacik's classroom, and so we get paired, we do groups of 3 students. So I was with one other senior and then a sophomore, and the class was split into 2 groups, so it was more like a one-on-one. And Miss Santora gave us kind of like games to play with the kids to get them wanting to be interested in sports, like going into the middle school, and with leadership and trying to show them like the sense of community you get when you're involved in stuff, and the friends and the clubs and everything that comes along with like the high school, with our high school and middle school for them. Yeah, just giving them like more opportunities to be involved, because I think it's hard to know everything that you're diving into when you go into the middle school. So yeah, that's really it.
And Amelia is super modest, so there's more to it than that, because part of their training was actually they're doing all that to show the
Leadership.
benefits and all of the character education components that come along with competing in athletics, but also being a scholar athlete, right? It's about the academics. But an example I'll give is that you were actually working on the concept of sportsmanship, right? And that was one of the lesson pieces.
Yeah, so each time we get a different lesson that we have to give. Last time was leadership, and this time is sportsmanship. So we have to give 2 examples of sportsmanship. We've seen positive and negative, and just like, I guess, show those examples to the kids, and they have to come up with own examples of themselves that they face. And yeah, we kind of just teach a lesson on sportsmanship, and last time was leadership.
We appreciate that you and the rest of SALT are doing what
Thank
you're
you.
doing, because you're impacting Dukes for years to come. So thank you.
Just a question on that. Do they go to middle school too, or just the elementary school?
This is our first year, so they're going to the middle school, and they're trying to push into the middle school next year, but this year it was easier for us to just go into the elementary school for our first year. But yes, we are trying.
Yeah, it might be a good idea for the 6th graders.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that, because
That was my question as well.
Amelia actually asked that at the end. She's like, why aren't we going to the middle school? And that was the explanation. But this is our first full year of running this. It was something that Mr. Cancelero was tasked with starting and has done a great job. Ms. Santora stepped in to assist with that as well. And they're doing a great job, but it was we needed to get that base of students trained in these ideals, and they're learning too. They're learning leadership, they're learning public speaking, and it's just another opportunity for them to develop important people skills. And it's a real great opportunity for our youngest students to have students that they actually admire. They come to a basketball game and watch our basketball players as similar to maybe an NBA or watching our track athletes, and can't believe how quick they are. And so it's just great, but I appreciate that we launched it and the students responded. I'm not surprised, but I'm very happy that we put it out there and the students responded and are doing a great job.
Just to give her another shout out, I think I saw that you helped plan that event on Friday too, right?
Yes, I did make all the phone calls. Yes,
Seems
I
the high
did.
school's going to take a hit with you
I know.
graduating.
Amelia, you are an outstanding asset to this school district, and we are going to miss you tremendously when you graduate. And I have to say that SALT program is tremendous. I have 2 kiddos that are a part of it, and I also have to say it does stand out on your college applications as well. When we took tours, admission counselors were like, what is this all about? And I was like, tell them what it's about. We have to capitalize on this. This is tremendous, So congratulations and thank you. Okay. Does anybody else have anything else? All right. We do have to go back into our executive session for a small personnel matter. There won't be any actions afterwards. So, James, can I get a motion? James. All in favor? Aye. Okay. That's it, right? We're done. Thank you, everyone.